Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'd like to talk about who's in the news, and it's O.J. Simpson, because he has just been paroled from prison. And we're all very acquainted with the fact of the huge trial that went on in 1995, where he was found not guilty for murdering his wife, Nicole Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman. But because he got off on that, I think they just found another way to put him in prison. And that was for armed robbery, which he has just gotten paroled with this month of July. So he can go. He's going to be released, and he's eligible to be released by October 1st. So I wanted to look at his chart to see what's going on, what this is all about, and most of all, what I predict will happen. Now, looking at O.J. Simpson's chart, let me go over the birth information. O.J. was born July 7th, 1947 at 8:08 a.m. in San Francisco, California. With that, his ascendant is 1 degree of Leo. I find that very interesting by the fact that Rahu right now is around 1 degree of Leo, and we have the solar eclipses occurring this month or next month. It's right now we're in July, but next month in September 21st, we have the solar eclipse at around 4 degrees of Leo. But Rahu and Ketu are right there. Now let's analyze his chart for just a moment, because it's very, very interesting, you're going to find. So with his Leo ascendant, this puts the moon in the 8th house. And he's got a moon at 2 degrees of Pisces. And what you're going to find is, looking to his moon in his chart, he has something that's basically, I consider, very rare. It's called a Kemadruma moon. Now, what is a Kemadruma moon? It is when there are absolutely no aspects to the moon, Vedic aspects, nor yogas, and that the moon must be isolated from all the other planets in the chart, which it is. It's isolated, and there are no aspects to the moon. And the moon's yogas go like this. The moon really needs to be surrounded by other planets. The moon loves to be supported. The moon deals with our emotions. It deals with how we feel supported, protected, and connected to other people. And when you have a Kemadruma moon, it means that you're disconnected. So notice there's no planets in the sign before or the sign after the moon, and there's no planets. And when I talk about planets, I'm basically talking about I'm not talking about the outer planets in terms of yogas. And so there's no planets aspecting the moon. Now, we do see Neptune is opposed to the moon, which has another whole array of indications, such as deception, deceit, and denial. But going back to the Kemadruma moon, I mean, there's nothing surrounding the moon, and the moon being in the 8th house on top of that. The 8th house is the house that deals with problems. It deals with scandals. It deals with humiliation. It deals with disgrace. It deals with dishonor. Okay? So if you have a moon in the 8th house, you will probably attest to the fact that at some time in your life, you felt a sense of humiliation. And most of all, it can deal with scandals. And in this case, this was probably the biggest scandal that hit the news. I mean, everyone back then, every time you put on the news, it was the only thing that was on. I mean, the media went wild with this, you know, because here this was, a beloved star, football star, in this shocking scenario, murder. And just looking at his chart in terms of who he is, aside from that moon feeling totally disconnected and alienated from the world. His moon is also in the nakshatra Purva Bhadrapada. And this nakshatra is a sharp and difficult nakshatra. And its symbol is a man with two faces. And I feel like this nakshatra can have two different sides to it, which obviously this man has. And over the course of the past 20 years, you know, there was question whether or not he did it, but I think now there's pretty much an agreement by the book that he put out pretty much saying he did it, by conversing and talking to deep friends that have come forth lately that he did it. And the thing that I think is the most convincing thing of that he did it is the real murderer never was revealed, and no one ever went to go look for anyone else. The DNA matched. Really? Maybe the glove didn't fit, but it was all over, the blood was all over his shoes and in the car. You know, this was a pretty interesting case concerning the issue with racism. I mean, that's what all surfaced in the news during this time. This is not my opinion. This is what happened. But going back to his chart, let's just go back. We see that he feels totally disconnected from the world and unprotected, okay? And there's two sides to him. And with the moon in the 8th house, it's all about disgrace and scandals. Now he has Mars conjunct Rahu in Taurus, but in the 10th house, this gives him his incredible, Mars Rahu, incredible athletic skills. I mean, he was a talented athlete. He started out life in a difficult place, but he came into sports, which gave him his life and made him famous. And his talents, his gifts came forth, and he became a very wealthy man. So looking at his chart, though, he does have planets in the 12th house, his Saturn and Mercury. 12th house is the house of prisons. It's the house of our own self-undoing. So, I mean, he could be his own worst enemy. And Mars with Rahu can represent anger. And it's in the 10th house. It was displayed to the world. So, but his charm and his grace, the things, and his dexterity, being very talented, is represented by his Venus Sun in his 11th house of gains, but it's in the sign of Gemini. Gemini is very agile. Gemini is very good with the hands. And in the 11th house, this is powerful. This is his gains. Venus is next to Uranus, which can make him very magnetic and rise to fame. But Venus, being powerful in this chart, is what made him very likable, and people just liked him, you know, from the movies he was in, from the television commercials. He had quite the friendly presence. But little did people know about his darker side, looking at the moon, his emotional body, where he felt like he was a prisoner. And Neptune's opposition to the moon can represent his denials, his deceit, and dishonesty. But the most important thing that I want to bring out and show in terms of what's going to be happening in O.J. Simpson's life as he's just gotten his parole is that when he was granted this parole, he just started his moon Mahadasha. And I believe because of the Kimadruma Yoga, it is his worst dasha ahead. And it is a planet in the 8th house. This is extremely difficult. So he just started his moon Mahadasha July 19th, 2017. And ironically, this is almost exactly the time, this is the exact time that he was granted his parole. So what we're going to see is that because he went to jail for this armed robbery, really, this was a way to put him away. But I bet the whole time that he was in prison, he was probably respected and honored, looked up to, adored. Probably the other prisoners really recognized and worshiped him. So here he is. He's in a safe place. But now he's getting out. He will no longer be in the safety of his prison walls or adored by the people around him. Because what we see is he's going into the moon's Mahadasha in the 8th house. So he's going from prison to freedom. But I think he's really going to the real prison. And maybe it's a prison that is his own prison. But let me tell you, there is a lot going on in this chart aside from this entrance into this Mahadasha. One of the things that I see happening in September is that Rahu and Ketu are about to shift signs. I know that right now there's been this eclipse, this big awakening and big change and transformation that's hit his chart. But where are the nodes of the moon headed? Rahu is headed into his 12th house, the house of prisons. But ironically, he's being released from prison. He's going to the real prison now because this freedom is not going to be freedom. Because he's going out into the real world where I don't think, based on the transits and the dasha sequence, he will be respected anymore. And this is going to be a huge wake-up call. Because going out in the real world is going to be treacherous for him, possibly even dangerous. Notice that transiting Pluto is almost exactly, well, it is exactly opposed to Sun right now. 23 degrees, Pluto's at 23 degrees of Sagittarius in the sky right now. His Sun is 23 degrees of Gemini. And the Sun is the planet that rules his chart. Yes, it goes into the 11th house, which is the house of friends. Do you think his friends are going to respect him? I think his friends are going to try to destroy him because Pluto is aspecting the Sun. O.J. Simpson probably figures he can go out in the real world, play golf, be in restaurants, be a part of the world again. But he's getting a rude awakening. Pluto, which represents control, power, governments, it's aspecting his Sun. Shoot, maybe he won't be accepted anywhere. Maybe he'll end up back in prison. With Rahu going into his 12th house of prisons while he's going to be released, there's something going on here that we can't see yet. And I think he's going to his own prison of his own demise. And you know, he's going to be very unhappy. And he could even be, I don't know if somebody with an ego like his there's a possibility of suicide, but the 8th house does deal with that. But I think he's just ready to really experience the true humiliation, because people are pretty convinced about the verdict of that 1995 court case. And many people believe he got away with murder, and they probably won't let this happen. So the other aspect I see is around the time that he get his parole in October and through the end of the year, transiting Saturn is going to the 5th house. It's going to be in Sagittarius. And as it's in his 5th house, well, the 5th house deals with the mind, our mental state of mind. And it's going to be suppressed. I feel like he's going to be depressed. And as Saturn comes up to around 2 degrees of Sagittarius, it's going to be aspecting his natal moon, which is the planet that rules the 12th house. He's going to wish he was back in prison. But there's no escaping the true prison of what is out in the real world and how he's going to be accepted and how he's going to feel. Because transiting Saturn will be squaring his moon, which represents difficulty, and he's in the moon Mahadasha. And likewise, Saturn's going to come up to aspect his Venus, which is his charm, his grace, and what he got by with before. And no one's going to see him as the charming, graceful O.J. Simpson of his popular days as a football star. So everything is about to shift and everything's about to change. And I believe, looking at O.J. Simpson's chart with the dashas and the transits, that he is really entering his true hell, his true, and I hate to say it, because, you know, you want the best and the involvement for everyone. And unless he can come clean, I think his consciousness, his mind, will get the best of him. And there's going to be a long road ahead of him of difficulty. That's what I'll say. So I'm looking at his chart, and my prediction is he needs psychological help, because the real world is going to really, really be hard for him. And that's my analysis based on his astrological chart for O.J. Simpson. If you would like to learn more about Vedic astrology, you can go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org. Or if you would like to learn Vedic astrology, I have a university, which is University of Vedic Astrology.com. Thank you.